go. The Bronsted acid-base model. Let's look at this reaction. We've a HA, some H2O water, the A- and H3O+. This looks like an acid-base reaction because we're seeing some protons being moved around. There is an H that's missing. There is an extra H here. So this really looks like a ideal acid-base problem. And we approach these things by identifying the acids and bases in the reactants and the products. Typically, the products are referred to as the conjugates. So we would end up taking the conjugates, the product, the A- and H3O+, and immediately identify them as being conjugates. There they are, the A- and H3O+. So just something you're going to have to remember. The conjugates will always be on the right-hand side of the reaction. And the next thing is on a Bronsted acid-base model. On each side, one of the materials will be classified as an acid and one will be classified as a base. Bronsted acid model says the substance that loses the proton. Now, the protons are the H. So we look at this substance here, HA. It's got AH combined with this A, and then we try and find it on the product side. It's going to be there. Here it is. It's the A-. But the A- is missing its H, so therefore this proton, this H, has been donated. It's been lost. This is the acid with the proton, and then here we are with the proton lost from the original HA. So therefore, this substance has got to be our conjugate base, because an acid automatically, as it reacts, turns into a base. And there it is. So the HA, it's got its proton, definitely it's got potential to be an acid. It can lose that H. And now that it's lost this acid proton, it is now classified as a base. Now, because it's the product, it is a conjugate base. So we've identified the acid and the base that it turns into. This substance, therefore, must be the base on the reactant side. This material, H2O, right now, in this reaction, must be acting as the base. And we can double check that, because a base is a substance that picks up an H+. So here it has 2 hydrogens, and now our water is converted. It's now got 3 hydrogens and a positive charge. It's picked up a proton. So this H3O+ on our product side now is identified as the acid because it now has that proton that it picked up. And we'll realize that these are our base conjugate and our acid conjugate. And note, our base will always turn into a conjugate acid. And we can look at this reaction in terms of acid, base, conjugate base, and our conjugate acid. One of the reasons we refer to this as the conjugate base, here we have our A-, is because in the reverse reaction, if you look backwards, you say, okay, let's see what's happening to this A-. Oh, look, it has now a proton. So in the reverse reaction, the base ends up picking up the proton. And in the reverse reaction here, we have our acid, H3O+, and we know acids donate protons, and if we go backwards, it has lost that proton. So it's a pretty logical system. In our reaction, we can end up having this go forward in one direction, and then we can make it go backwards in the other. So this is something that can happen in both directions. Yes, this reaction and acid-base reactions are reversible, which is sort of neat to figure out, that in the forward reaction, we have our acid acting, and of course, in a reverse reaction, we have our acid reacting. It's a very, very logical system. Now, in terms of what's going to actually happen, is this reaction going to go mostly forward? Is it going to go mostly backwards? That's going to depend on the strengths of these things. The real question is, which one of these acids is going to prevail? Is this HA going to have enough of an ability to get rid of its proton and dump it onto the base? And is the base strong enough of a base so it says, I'm going to take that proton? So they both have strengths. We have to find out by looking at what happens in a reaction. If this reaction goes mostly forward, then it means that these characters were successful acting as an acid and a base. And if the forward reaction is the one that really takes place, if this forward reaction predominates, if this reaction is stronger, the acid will be successful and convert itself into H3O+. And the base will be successful picking up the protons and convert itself into its conjugate base. As a result, the stronger acids, they'll always be together. That's the way it works out. If you identify the stronger acid, it will always be with the stronger base. And then in this case, if this arrow goes forward and we get mostly A-, the conjugate base and the conjugate acid, this will be the weaker species, acid and base. Of course, if the reaction went reverse, then we'd end up knowing that this stuff would disappear and be stronger, and this would be weaker. The rule is that the substances that are stronger disappear. They react. They're not there anymore, or they'll be present in lower concentrations, and the weaker ones here are stuck with being the base in the predominant concentration, and here this is stuck with the proton. These guys aren't as effective as being as an acid base. So the weak will always prevail in terms of concentration.
For AP Chemistry, students will have to know that there are only 6 common acids that are stronger than H3O+, the hydronium ion. The halogen acids, HCl, Br, and HI, HF is weak, and then nitric, sulfuric, and perchloric. These are so strong that they will virtually 100% convert into their weaker, actually almost non-base at all, anions, and the hydronium ion. So a solution of any one of those 6 acids will contain virtually none of the acid itself and be converted almost entirely into hydronium ions and the anions. Aside from the 6 strong acids, all the other acids, HA generally, are significantly weaker than the H3O+, than the hydronium ion. So if you dump in some of this weak acid into water, it's going to try and donate its proton to the H2O to make H3O+, but the H3O+ is so strong in terms of its acid strength that that's going to make the reaction go backwards, and you have very, very little of the HA successfully acting as an acid. So you can't find out the concentration of the H3O+, which determines the pH of the solution, unless you can figure out how much of that HA can be successful. And that's determined by the Ka, or the acid constant, and we're going to find out about that later.
That's a quick summary of the Bronsted acid-base model. Good luck with that, because you're going to see it a lot. Understand this. It's a little complicated because you've got to reverse, forward, and backwards. But still, you're only dealing with 4 substances. You know the conjugates are the products. If you follow these rules, you're not going to be lost. You're not going to be like an acid that loses its proton.